and it is called the adapter design pattern. Now, what the adapter design pattern allows you to do is use two completely incompatible interfaces and get them to work together, just like any other adapter. So let's say you only have two plugs in a wall outlet. However, you want to connect something that has three plugs. What are you going to use? An adapter, which is exactly what this guy is. And you're going to use the adapter pattern whenever the client expects to use a target interface, which means the target interface in this situation would be a two-pronged plug. However, you have a three-pronged plug, and that's what the adapter is going to do. It's going to convert the three-prong into the two-prong. And just like our adapter here, the adapter class is going to allow you to use any available interface that makes sense, of course, with the target interface. And to look at it in a completely different way, any class can work together as long as the adapter solves the issue that all classes must implement every method defined by a shared interface. So let's look at that as a UML diagram. Okay, so you have the client, and he wants to use, in this situation, an enemy attacker. Again, I'm looking at this like a video game. Alright, so every enemy attacker so far can fire a weapon, drive forward, and assign a driver. However, you want to create an artificially intelligent enemy robot. Now, an enemy robot has no need for a driver. Also, it is not going to drive forward, it's going to walk forward. And in this situation, let's say our enemy robot also has no weapons, it just smashes things with its feet and its hands. So what are we going to do? We're going to implement an adapter here, and this is what everything is called. The enemy attacker in this situation is called the target. The enemy robot adapter, of course, is going to be called the adapter, and the enemy robot is the adaptee. So you want to look at the enemy robot like it is just any other enemy attacker. How are you going to do that? Well, you take the adapter and you're going to store inside of it an enemy robot, and then what you're going to do is each time one of these methods is called, whether it's fire, weapon, drive forward, or assign driver, you're going to point to the correct version for the enemy robot, which is stored inside of the adapter using composition. This is just an object that we're going to be working with. So there's a basic overview of the adapter pattern. So let's get into the code and explain it further. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the target interface, and this is going to be enemy attacker. So we're just going to come in here and go public interface enemy attacker. Pretty simple. And then we're going to define all the different methods it's going to need. Now this is what the client expects to be working with, and it is also the adapter's job to make new classes compatible with this interface we are creating here. So as we said before, we're going to need to fire a weapon or cause damage in one way or another. We're also going to have to come in here and drive forward with our attacker, and then finally we're going to have to assign a driver, and there you go. There is your interface, and it's all ready to use, and that is inside of enemy attacker.java. Now let's go over and actually implement it inside of enemy tank.java. Now enemy tank is going to implement the enemy attacker perfectly, and our job is just to make sure that we implement all of the methods inside of here that enemy attacker defines. Now I'm going to import a little library in here just to add some randomness to this thing, and then I'm just going to jump into it. We're going to go public class. Now if we're going to be creating a tank that is going to implement enemy attacker, that is how we're going to do it. And then of course it's going to say you need to add some unimplemented methods inside of this guy, and there we are. So we're going to add those in there. So pretty easy. So then we just need to define exactly what we're going to have here. And I'm also going to generate some random values here. This has nothing to do with a pattern. I'm just doing this to make this a little bit more interesting. And then we need to have this do certain things. So what are we going to have it do? Well, I'm going to say attack damage is going to be equal to, and I'm going to go generator next int, and what this is going to do is give me a value between 1 and 10 to be able to use as a random attack value. And then I'm just going to go system out, print line, and we'll say enemy tank, and all of the code is available underneath the video, so you should definitely check it out to help you better understand this. But it's pretty simple. This is one of the easier patterns to understand. Alright, so whenever it attacks, it's going to do a certain amount of damage here. So pretty easy to understand. And also, again, I'm sort of looking at this like it's a video game. Let's say we want to also have a random movement, and let's say that the random movement is going to be between 1 and 5. That's how we're going to calculate that. Again, this random stuff has nothing to do with the pattern. Just throwing it in there to make it interesting. So now what are we going to do? We're going to go enemy tank moves and then we'll say it moves a certain random distance. And there we are. And then finally, we need to assign a driver to this guy. One thing I didn't do is with the enemy attacker over here with assign driver, I'm going to need to go string driver name. So once again, that's in the enemy attacker interface. Save that, jump back over into enemy tank and implement this. And it's going to get a string driver name. And then here we're just going to go driver name is driving the tank. And there you go. And that's all we need to do for this guy. So now we need to go in here and create our enemy robot, which is not going to have these methods, and then we'll figure out how to fix that. So just go into enemy robot.java, and this is what is called the adaptee, and the adapter is just going to send method calls to objects that use the enemy attacker interface to the right methods that are going to be defined inside of this enemy robot class we have here. So let's say I want to also come in here and do some random stuff with it, and then we'll go public class enemy robot, and then I'm just going to go random generator again just to make it interesting. Okay, so now our robot doesn't have any weapons. However, it can smash things with its hands. Now, of course, for the most part, you're going to use the adapter whenever it makes sense. So in this situation, it not having weapons, normal weapons like shooting weapons, but it has hands. So it sort of makes sense for me to use the adapter pattern in this situation, and that's very important. You never want to try to cram the usage of the adapter pattern in there whenever it wouldn't make sense. There we go, just doing a random 1 through 10, and then we're going to, in this situation, enemy robot causes attack damage with its hands. There you go. So you can see the difference between this enemy robot and what it is doing versus our normal attackers, which are like tanks and things like that. So then what are we going to do? Well, it doesn't move forward in the normal way. It walks forward. So we're just going to make it do what it does is equal to generator, next int, and then this is going to give me a value of 1 through 5. Then system out, enemy robot walks forward, and then movement, and then say it also goes a certain number of spaces. So there you go. All right, so we implemented 2 methods here inside of enemy robot, and then let's implement the final one. So what are we going to do whenever our enemy robot is approached by a human? Since this is artificially intelligent, it does not need a human to drive it. So driver name is still going to be passed here. However, we're going to say enemy robot tramps on, let's say he doesn't like the whole concept of being driven, and he's just going to tramp on our driver who tries to drive him. So there you go. All 3 of these methods do not work currently based off of the enemy attacker interface. So now it's our job to go inside of enemy robot adapter and make them work. We just need to have the adapter provide an alternative action for all the methods that need to be used, because as you're going to see here in a second, enemy robot adapter is going to implement enemy attacker. So we just need to go public class enemy robot adapter implements enemy attacker. There you are. Now, since it's going to implement that same interface as everything else, we're of course going to have to implement all the methods that are going to be needed. So let's do that. And then using composition, of course, like I mentioned previously, you're going to have to create an enemy robot object inside of here, and I'm going to call it the robot. And then whenever fire weapon is called, we're going to use the robot. And then of course, we're going to have to create a constructor for this guy. So public enemy robot adapter, and it's going to get past an enemy robot for it to work, and I'm going to call it new robot, and then just go the robot is equal to new robot. And there you go. Okay, so now it's our job to implement these methods down here and make them work with our enemy robot methods. Very simple. Just go the robot whenever this is called, smash with hands instead will be called. So it's just going to work just quite simply just by throwing in our specific enemy robot methods inside of there. So pretty simple stuff. So walk forward is what it's going to implement, and then of course for assign driver, what are we going to do? Go the robot, react to human, and driver's name is going to be inside of there, and you can see it just pops right inside of there. All done. There we are. Enemy robot adapter is fixed. So now our only job is to go into test enemy attackers and see if it works. So we're going to create ourselves an enemy tank and call it RX7 tank, whatever. And this is going to be a regular type of enemy tank that we're going to be creating here, like that. And then we're going to create also an enemy robot, and I'm just going to call him Fred the robot is equal to new enemy robot, and then I'm going to create an enemy attacker, and I'm going to type in this situation, I'm going to use the enemy robot adapter to make this guy work. So I'm going to go robot adapter, new enemy robot adapter, and I'm going to pass it Fred the robot, because remember, that's going to need to be passed over. Enemy robot adapter, there it is. See, this is what we're calling this constructor right here, and enemy robot is going to be passed, so that's what I'm doing with that. And then just to make this nice and clean, I'm just going to say the robot, which is going to look at this just like it's a regular old robot, not using my adapter. And then what do we need to do here? We're going to go Fred the robot, react to human, and let's say it's Paul is the unlucky human that's going to be interacting with that. Fred the robot, and I'm just going to go down here, go walk forward, Fred the robot, and then the final thing he's going to do is smash with hands. So there you are. I created an actual Fred the robot. This is an enemy robot. And then what we're going to do is actually use the adapter to see how they both work together. So in this situation, I'm going to go the enemy tank and then call everything inside of that. So we're going to go rx7 tank dot, and we're going to go assign driver, and we're going to pass it the value of Frank, who's going to be using my tank, RX-7 tank. We're also going to drive forward with Frank here, RX-7 tank, and then we're going to fire our weapon. And there you are. So we're going to see what an enemy robot acts like on its own. Then we're going to see what an enemy tank does. And then, finally, we're going to see what the robot with adapter does, to show how to use the robots and adapters. So we're going to go robot adapter, and then we're going to go assign driver, and what is the name of this unlucky guy? His name's going to be Mark, and then we're going to go robot adapter again, and then what are we going to do? We're going to call drive forward, and then just let it figure itself out, robot adapter again, and then we're going to go fire weapon, even though we know it doesn't have that capability. Alright, so we have it all set up. Now let's test it to see if our adapter works. Execute. And you can see right here, here is the robot part, and you can see, of course, it tramps on Paul, it walks instead of just simply moving, and it causes 4 damage with its hands. Then you have the enemy tank. It acts just like a tank, drives the tank, moves 3 spaces, causes 4 damage. And here is our robot with our adapter. See, it tramps on Mark, even though we're using the enemy attacker interface here. It's going to walk forward 1 space and cause 9 damage with its hands. So there is the adapter design pattern. Pretty easy.